So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to the afternoon session of the Flyway Youth Forum. And we're all excited to have a very amazing and engaging session today about a voice for our wetlands, a science, communication, and storytelling workshop for you to actually reach more people, raise awareness about your work on conservation, and actually engage more youth and leaders alike. So welcome. My name is Gab Mejia. I'm the Communication and Outreach Lead of the Youth Engaged in Wetlands, or YOU. And today I will be moderating the session along with our amazing trainer who I will be introducing soon. So before anything else, I'd like to actually share first our online best practices to make this session more meaningful. So again, please add your name and your country in your Zoom profile. Mute your microphone unless you would like to speak, and use the chat for questions or comments throughout the session. Again, please note this session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, please turn off your video. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our trainer who will be actually equipping us with ways and tools to engage more people around the world on our work on conserving migratory species and wetlands. So Sacha Dench is an Australian-born biologist who graduated from the University College of London and the current United Nations Ambassador for the Convention on Migratory Species, or CMS. She's the founder of Conservation Without Borders, an international organization that looks out for migratory species and issues that most need help. She is a conservationist, adventurer, and a motivational speaker, having presented TED Talks about her work in conserving different wildlife species across the world. She has worked for international conservation organizations and communications for more than 15 years. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Sacha Dench. Hi, Sacha.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, great.
Yep.
I am, and can you see me?
Yes, also.
Okay, fine. All right. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, and for the opportunity to speak to everybody today. This is really exciting for me because, yeah, wetland conservation is, well, I suppose conservation has kind of been in my heart for a very long time, since I was small. I grew up, as I said, in outback Australia, and then later on I found myself moving between Europe and Australia. So I have a bit of a foot in both camps, but I've worked in different places around the country, around the world, sorry. And yeah, I will just start sharing my screen. Give me a moment to make that happen. Share screen. Are you seeing the right screen, Gab? You are seeing the right screen? You seeing the presenter view? No, you're not. You can't be now. I'm assuming you are now. Is that right?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, I began my career actually early on as a marine scientist. So I was a marine turtle geneticist for a few years. And my journey slowly into the world of conservation, into the world of kind of storytelling and communication was a kind of a bit of a different one. I found myself in different situations where I had lots of really interesting data, but I couldn't see the way of kind of convincing a whole lot of people to change the situation. And I eventually found actually how important storytelling was in all of that. So what we're going to do today is we've got a reasonably short time to pack in quite a lot of information. I am going to quickly try and summarize these few things. So first of all, the learning objectives. So in my introduction, I'm going to focus on 3 examples from my career of how I went from how I've used maybe my science background and merged that into storytelling and how important that has been. And then we'll go into a little bit about the art of storytelling and yeah, the keys to making that work. And then we're going to break out into your workshops where I'll get you to work through some examples. So you have been sent, I think, I'm not sure if you all have been sent already, the worksheet example. So I'll give you quite clear instructions on how to work through a campaign plan really quite quickly. So this is a brainstorming session where you'll have some specific examples and you won't have enough of the little details as you would in real life. So just imagine what they'll be. The whole purpose is to work through those examples and come up with something at the end of it. So that's the basic summary of it. And in that practice session, you'll come up with, you'll look into how to differentiate and identify your different audiences, what approach you take to lobbying or advocacy, to develop your campaign, and then just practice your presentation pitch. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to jump into the 3 examples I want to go through from my career. And I have worked on lots of different projects, including some in the East Asian, Australasian flyway. So my first example is part of my career years ago. I found myself really curious about the problem of shark nets. So this is not, well, the issue of shark nets off the coast of Australia. Now, as a biologist at the time, I had swum out to some of the shark nets and I'd seen the sorts of things that were being caught in shark nets. And I'd asked to see the statistics. Can I just check that everyone can hear me and I'm not speaking too fast? Australians have a tendency to speak very fast. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I started to request all the statistics of what animals were caught in shark nets, and I was seeing that there was actually a lot of things I was seeing were completely not harmful, and it wasn't looking like it made a lot of sense to me. Anyway, the first thing I did, I requested all the data. I got all the data and I saw figures in there that really worried me. So I started trying to raise awareness about these statistics, and I found that people were like disinterested in my really interesting facts. There was some interest from a few people. And then I started looking, well, basically when I was out looking at the shark nets, I then had somebody come out and start with me taking photographs of the shark nets. So at this point, I realized that I then had my shark net statistics and my reputation as a biologist, and I had some interesting images. I had some amazing images of shark nets. And so at this point, I found people were now disinterested. They were quite a lot more interested in the photos we had. And so we had photos and video, and then we had some media attention. And then about, what happened to happen next was that I became Australian freediving champion. So does everybody know what freediving is? I don't know. Can people chat and I can see it? Does everybody know what freediving is? It's basically holding your breath and diving down as deep as you can. So I became Australian freediving champion, and I don't know if it's the same in your countries, but in Australia, sports is probably the most highly covered thing in the news. And so as soon as I became Australian freediving champion, so we had shark net statistics, I then had also powerful images, and I was a sports personality. Suddenly people were really interested in what I had to say about conservation. And at first it was really bothered me. I thought, surely you would respect, or you'd want to hear more from a biologist than from a sports personality about this issue of an ecological problem. And I fought it for a while, and then I just decided, why fight it? Work with the fact that in this culture, that's the kind of story that gets your foot in the door. That's what opens people's minds up to talking about conservation. So stop fighting that. So that was one of the key messages for me, is try and work with the culture and find the story that gets people into your issue. Don't worry too much about the fact that the statistics alone aren't good enough for people when they should be. If people acted rationally, they should be. So the second story I want to cover is another one from years later, where I was working at the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust, WWT. Some of you may have come into contact with them through work on the East Asian Australasian Flyway as well. So the project that I had to work on, sorry, those images aren't great resolution, but I was working at WWT, and we had been working to recreate an area of wetland on an area of coast that had been farmland for many years. And it was being done for a few reasons. One of those is because the flood defences couldn't be kept anymore. Yeah, so we basically had an issue where there were a lot of locals who had been seeing this farmland with diggers on it, slowly being converted, stuff being dug out, some bits were becoming more boggy. And the pictures that you can see on your screen now are the kinds of things that the locals had been seeing for some time. And then you had other local influential people who'd been seeing the same thing. They were seeing that money was being spent on this project. And there was an easy argument to say, this is farmland making food now being turned into muddy bogs. Why are we doing this? Gab, if you're writing me a message, let me know. Are you writing me a message? So they were wanting to turn it into basically local influential people were seeing it mostly in a negative light, and it started to get negative press, and we were about to come to launch it. And so sorry, Gab, I can't see your message, but yeah. So we had an issue of quite a negative image of this project that was actually really, really important. And at that point, I realized, what angle could how could we reframe the story? We needed a sudden change in the way that people were seeing it. And I thought about it all and realized actually that from above, that's where, when I was flying a paramotor to take aerial images, from above, you could really see it in a different light. So at this point, I got up in my paramotor, and I got up early in the morning when there was beautiful light, and then in the evening, and I took some very different pictures of what this wetland would look like. So this is the sort of image I got from the air, completely reframing the story. And you can see the fact that the whole area looked like a bit of a leaf. So the water now being brought into the landscape, you could present it as something which was bringing life or lungs to the area. And these images got on the front of the national newspapers in this country. So it completely reframed the story. Gab, I'm afraid I can't see your message. So all I can see is that you are trying to write one. So yeah, so this is I suppose the message from this is basically that you can, a picture paints 1,000 words, so don't forget that. And then the third story I want to mention to you is one of the Buick Swan. So I was asked to come and help WWT and other organisations along a flyway look specifically at this species. The population had been decreasing quite quickly on this flyway, and there was lots of different threats. So different threats in different countries, which makes migratory species particularly difficult to try and conserve. You've got different countries, and every country can always say, well, there's no point us doing our piece because other countries won't do their piece, so why should we bother? And so I looked at I've been asked to help bring lots of different people into this meeting, also the different stakeholders who were behind some of the threats. So there was hunting was an issue, power line collisions was an issue, loss of wetlands was an issue. They were all quite negative issues. And I just realized that trying to get all those different people interested in this issue was really hard, because you were starting with such a negative story. Who wants to really hear stories about lots of things dying? It's not a really exciting thing to hear. So I decided to try and reframe the story through the journeys of the birds themselves, as other organizations have done. I just saw that in this case, it was quite an unusual, it was a particularly exciting journey for me. Looking at the journey of the birds, they go from very different landscapes, the land of polar bear and reindeer breeders, and nomadic people, and areas which are very undeveloped, the wild tundra, all the way across the tundra, and then thick taiga forest, and then across Europe, where there's farms and castles and stormy seas, and they're also being shot at. We know 1 in 3 birds got shot in their bodies. So that was a bit of a James Bond story of the bird world. Could I bring that to life? Because I was pretty sure that the hunters and the power companies and all people really would want to hear a James Bond story for the bird world. So I decided to bring that to life by flying the whole migration with the birds. So it was definitely a mad idea. But it seemed to work for a lot of people, and it worked on a few levels. Gab, am I okay for time? Are you telling me I need to speed up? Is that what you're trying to text me? No, okay, fine. So why did I decide to bring the journey to life by flying with them? Well, I can tell you there's a few reasons. And it took me about 6 months. I sat on it going, this is a really stupid idea, before I sent it to somebody and we went for it. So basically, when you're flying in this device, I basically experience a migration very similar to birds. You're exposed to the elements. You can fly at a similar speed. You're also always looking out for places to land. You're looking out for what threats there might be. You're having to deal with turbulent weather, also things you might collide with, and safe places to refuel. Obviously, my refueling is very different to how the birds refuel. But that was the general core of it. And there was another couple of reasons. One of them was that when I land and want to talk to people on the ground, they ask me normally 3 basic questions. One of those is, where have you come from? Which starts as a conversation about a flyway. Isn't it dangerous? Which is an opportunity to talk about the threats to migratory birds. And lastly, how can I help? So people generally want to help you in that scenario, despite the fact that I was talking to hunters about hunting. I was talking to power companies about how they might be part of the problem. People generally want to help another human being. So that I found really quite inspiring. And so, yeah, did that all along a flyway, reframing the story. And I opened it up very much to ordinary people to try and help us solve a mystery. So we knew what lots of the threats were, and the scientists could say, well, we kind of know what's going on, but I kept it very open and said, we're trying to find out what's going wrong for the birds, because it enabled people to come up with suggestions. So that's how we got people online and in person suggesting things they could do or observations they'd made. Whereas if I'd said, oh, we know the answers, we just know you're part of the problem, it would have created a wall and potentially stopped people from coming and offering their ideas. And we still now, 4 years on from this project, I still get people emailing me saying, with ideas and suggestions and things they want to do. So it's left a mark on a lot of people as well, which is great. So I'm now going to briefly show you the trailer for the film for this project, just to give you a bit of a feel for it. Am I all okay, Gab?
The bird actually being shot.
Could be the end of that nest.
Sorry. Okay, right. So that's just, yeah, the music just trails out there. So yeah, that was the trailer for the project. So I'll just try and I'll give you a bit of a summary of the sort of storytelling on that project that really worked. And I learned a lot about it, basically how the stories behind the research and the conservation can be your real secret weapon. So one of the things I learned on that project was that I suppose there were 3 different levels of stories that you could tell. So first of all, there was the thing that was getting the media attention, that would first grab somebody's attention, was story of mad woman trying to fly like a bird. So that was the attention getter, and we worried that that was the only thing that people might cover. But it turns out it's not possible to write that story without asking why, and so that led into other things. But there was a second level of storytelling, which was once you've got somebody's attention, then talking about the kind of what we know about the birds, the incredible journey, that sort of thing opened up, and different research techniques, etc. That opened up people's mind. That's where they started to get curious and start to think. But the thing that I found actually made people start to offer to help was stories about other people along the flyway who were doing something. So when I tell people in Europe, the sort of things, the nanettes in the tundra, they were basically offering to change the way that their lifestyles are, because in order to try and help the swan. And the fact that they were offering that primarily when I told them stories about volunteers across Europe going out en masse in their thousands, trying to count them at certain times of the year. They were like, wow, do you kind of people do that? People care that much about swans? So the really powerful thing I found was actually telling stories about other people a bit like them. That was what made people motivated. So your stories can be used in different ways and at different levels. And I was going to quickly ask people, I don't know if in the chat anybody can write just off the top of your head what you think makes a good story. And I guess you can think about that if you can for a few seconds, but I'm going to, I suppose, summarize it by, in my head, it's anything that sparks an emotion or curiosity of some kind in somebody. And it also, I suppose, has to pass a test of, is it the kind of thing that you could say to someone at a party and they wouldn't turn away? So could you say, hey, did you hear about this lady that was flying with the swans? That kind of works, whereas you couldn't really say, hey, did you know lots of swans are dying? I mean, it's a hard thing to start a conversation with a stranger about. So maybe for me, that's a bit of a litmus test. Empathy, empathetic, engaging, appeals to emotions. Exactly. Yes. A bravest scientist ever. That's funny that you say that. Okay, so that is the core of a good story. Just remember that. And most of us, it's inherent in human beings. So if it feels like a good story, it's a good story. And very, very lastly, I'm going to go over just a really quick one. Another thing about story, why is it so important, the way that you frame your conversations with people? So for me on this expedition, a big part of it was opening up with a story which opens people's minds, a kind of impression of awe. That's what I want to get across. And I want to, I suppose, juxtapose it with the two issues I had, for example, with the hunters or with power companies. I could have started off with opening with a story of like that opens them up, or with a story that they feel like they're being sort of attacked, you're part of the problem sort of story. And if you think about it, there's a real biological scientific basis to why these things work. Because, for example, if you incite fear in somebody, you incite these sorts of, you incite the parts of the brain that makes their adrenaline go up, it triggers a fight or flight. It also reduces kind of clear thinking and feelings of collaboration. When you want to fight somebody or run away from them, you're not collaborating. The other option you have when you incite awe is a bit different. So awe incites the parts of the brain that reduce stress, that increase critical thinking. So it's like when you sort of step back from something and see the big picture, see yourself as quite small, it enables you to think more clearly. It also apparently makes people feel more collected and more connected, and more collaborative, but also more generous and even less materialistic and money focused on the day-to-day. So if you're wanting to change someone's opinion or get them on your side, all of those parts of the brain are much more important to be active. Okay, so with that, let's get on to the scenarios. Are you ready, Gab? So
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's my kind of summary of the background of story. And now on to scenarios.
I'll share the screen. So
if there's any quick questions, you can put them in the chat. I think I'll be able to see them.
So for this workshop, we'll be actually giving you scenarios, certain scenarios. We'll be breaking you up into 6 to 7 breakout groups with 6 to 7 members each. And here you will work on a realistic scenario and you have to imagine the details, the story. So this will be an exercise for you to work together and create the stage and to create a pitch, a campaign pitch. It could be like creating a documentary like what Sacha did, or any kind of media campaign, advocacy, whatever it is. You have the creative freedom to create this story or this pitch. And remember, this is just an ideation phase, so don't worry if your ideas aren't perfectly formed. The point is to actually brainstorm and work together through a whole process as a team. So we'll be giving you some 5 minutes on the background research. What outcomes do you want? So this is all in the handout that I gave you earlier in the Google Docs. We'll just be talking about it more in detail. So ask yourselves if there could be unintended consequences. And what is your pathway to change? Identify in your group what ways to bring about the change you want on that specific certain issue and scenario that's example, what decision maker could change the decision to block a development or change a policy or raise awareness on a school, the youth, and how you could do that. And next is actually who are the influential people in this situation. You have to think with your group, who are the people involved in the scenario that's giving? Are these your allies? Are these your opponents? Are you here to engage influencers, Generation Z, social media? Who are the agents of change? Who are the people that can actually make an impact by sharing this story of this particular scenario? And next, you'll be given 10 minutes in your breakout rooms as well to plan on your campaign. Choose priority audience from the question tree and what would you like them to think? What do you like to do? What is this? Are you going to put images? Are you going to put text? Are you going to create a video, a documentary? So you don't have to do all of those, but you will be given a chance to pitch about it. So, and remember, a certain tip is to imagine you are in the audience shoes. So think about and be empathetic with your audience, who you're trying to engage in this scenario and who you're trying to change. What might they care about, worry, want, or need? This will help you understand on how you might react to the different messages of your pitch and campaign. And what facts and figures do you have on this story? And what stories might you want to tell? Are you here to tell about the wildlife? Are you here to tell about indigenous communities, about people? You can use images and video. We will be providing you with mural links in a bit where you can work on that link to input any image, video, text, or anything that you want. So what resources do you have? This is also important, but for now, since this is just an ideation phase, you have to think about your team as well. So you don't have to worry about budgets, but this is also an important part in creating a pitch. And last is to prepare your pitch on Miro. So pitch your campaign to the group. Use images, diagrams, whatever visuals you want, text, and make sure to include a summary of the above, your background thinking and why you chose this audience, a collection of the kinds of campaign assets you might use, facts, imagery, stories, and your main methods of communicating that to the audience. Are you showing it through a documentary? Are you showing it through an exhibit, educational materials, or ideas, and especially a campaign slogan? So here are the details that will help you guide in presenting your pitch. So again, you will be broken down into breakout rooms. And for each breakout group, we will be sending a mural link that already includes the scenarios there. It's on the top part corner. And here you will work on that scenario with your team. So feel free to express your creative freedom in the mural canvas that we will provide for you. So you can add images, videos, text to answer the questions in the handout. So make your pitch more creative in Mural. So in your group, you're assigned to choose persons from your breakout session to present your campaign pitch afterwards. So we'll be giving you about 30 minutes to work with your team on creating this pitch on that certain scenario. And you will choose 2 people from your team to present it after. So we will be having a rundown of presentations afterwards. So share your screen of that pitch that you made in Mural in the canvas. And you only have 5 minutes to present your pitch. So we could be more lenient in this, but generally there will be a timer that we will be showing, and we will show a thumbs up reaction to show how many minutes you have left. So we will be sharing the mural links and breaking you out in different groups now. So here, so Vivian, maybe we can already break them out into groups. So Sacha and I will also be going through the different groups. We will be joining in you and seeing your progress and how you work together. If you have any questions, feel free to chat, or when we're there, directly ask us. So, okay. And this would be a very fun and engaging session, so you can actually work together with your team. So the breakout rooms are already open, so you can now start joining your group. Ordering the group presentation by first group 1, then group 7, then group 2, then group 6, then group 3, then group 5, and group 4. Last but not least, group 4. So I will be the one sharing your mural canvas, and the presenters of each group, feel free to unmute and share your video. We will pin that and you can start presenting. So I have a timer. Again, for the last 1 minute, I'll be reacting with this party emoji, as well as a bell. I will be ringing something about a bell just so you guys could hear it for timekeeping purposes. So without further ado, we can start with group 1. So I'll share the screen. Ooh, some people are still working on the mural. I can see. Okay.
And can I just add, although Gab said this is realistic, you will never ever be expected to come up with a campaign in 25 minutes. So you will not be judged for how nice it looks.
There's no right or wrong answers in this one. This is really just a challenge for you guys as well.
Yeah.
Think of like a common problem and work on it together. So here we have for group 1. So for group 1, the representative of group 1, feel free to come on board, unmute yourself, and share your video. So for group 1, the scenario is in response to the climate crisis, a Malaysian-based company is suddenly shifting into biofuels for energy rather than coal. With this, the company is draining the largest peat bogs in Borneo and harvesting the peat for fuel as an alternative. So let's see what group 1 has come up with their pitch. So group 1, feel free to introduce yourself, representative of group 1. Don't be shy. There were groups a while ago who were just muted and not talking to each other, but working on the mural.
We are.
Yeah. So, greetings everyone. My name is Kyle Viapoy and my partner is...
I'm Chen from Malaysia.
And we'll be pitching about the scenario of the Malaysian-based company who suddenly shift to biofuels for energy rather than coal. So as we all know, even though the problem or the scenario wants to push for green energy by switching to biofuels, the bad side of it was it drains our peatlands, which is responsible also for our carbon storage. And by that, we want to target these 3 areas, which are the local community, the government, and the private sector. These 3 are interconnected and has an important role for the conservation of our peatlands, the local and the pathways of communication that we will do will be done by Chen.
Right, thanks, Carl. So as for the communication, so how do we reach to our target audiences, which is the local communities, government, and also private sector? We have, after our discussion, we decided to go for 2 methods, which is awareness campaign, which this awareness campaign we will reach to all these 3 sector or parties, because we understand that many might not know that the importance of peatland, so hence the importance of awareness campaign. And then we also think that we should have a declaration statement to state the importance as well. And this is especially target to government and also private sector. Yep. Right. Kyle, did I miss anything that you would like to add on?
And yes, that's right.
And within, 30 minutes, we couldn't think of any, eye-catchy slogan. So we decided to go with some simple, but which is very straightforward, easy to understand. So let's not drain the peat, and which is our most important carbon storage. Right. Thank you very much.
Yes, we will be the influential persons that would be involved in these campaigns would be the non-governmental organizations, the governments, as well as these non-governmental organizations are those involved as well in the conservation work. And we want to push for these private sectors to move for the sustainable use of energy as well to conserve our peatlands. So yes, that's basically also. This is the collaborative work of Shen, Fariha, and mine as well as my other group mates. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify, your pathway to change was to convince the company to go for a different kind of energy. Is that it?
I guess we would just like to highlight sustainable. As long as it's sustainable and it didn't affect much to local community, then yeah, that is the direction.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, is that all? Group one? You guys finished?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So we will be providing a feedback later after all the groups have presented. So we can move on to group 7. So hi, group 7. There. So the scenario for group 7 is a fossil fuel company was recently given permission due to changes in policy reserve in Alaska, an indigenous community that currently lives there. So hi, group 7. Who will be your representative? Group 7.
Aslin.
Don't be shy.
So I'll be presenting from group 7. So the main outcome that we will reach to achieve for this campaign is to have stop drilling in Alaska. And to achieve this, we'll be talking to the indigenous community and as well as the policymakers. So, and we will go for the protests and also having a public speech to make sure that the message is getting out to the people. And we will be having a Instagram campaigns and some activities which and there are a few slogans that we are having, which is including stop drilling for birdings and indigenous against drilling and no drilling our land. So the influential people that we have identified is including the politicians, NGO, environmental activists, as well as the tribe leader from the indigenous community. So we will be showing the facts and figures that would be the outcome of the oil drillings, which is we can see that it will impact the conservations, it will impact the biodiversity of the area of the nature reserve, as well as the indigenous community where their life depends on the for the nature reserve. So I guess that's all.
So do you plan to create any visuals? So it's more focused on social media campaigns, right?
Yes, we'll be working on the social media campaigns.
So okay, great job, group 2. So wow, you guys are presenting fast. We still have 2 minutes left, but let's go on to, oh no, this is group 7, sorry. Let's go to group 2. So hi, group 2. Wow, that's a very extensive table. That's
Actually,
great. That's great work.
I created a PowerPoint presentation. So
Wow. I mean, if you have it now, feel free to
yeah,
share it.
yeah, I have it now already. Like I'm done.
Okay, go share it. You can share it.
Wait, share. Am I allowed to share screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you need to be made co-host.
Yeah.
Would it be possible?
It's
Okay, I'll just wait.
Vivian to be made your
Yes, I
co-host.
can make co-host. What's the name?
Matthew. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, just tell me if.
Okay. I think you can.
Okay. Share screen.
That's
Share.
amazing.
Is it can you see it or
It's still gap screen, I think.
can you see it?
No.
What?
Maybe gap stop sharing and then okay, now we see. Cool.
Oh, okay, thank you. Wait, Frances and I will be. Hello, Frances, are you here?
Hey, yep.
Okay, so in the other presenters, I think like if so for our slogan, it's be part of the lake. So the scenario is wait, I'll try to wait. I wasn't able to include here. Oh my gosh, wait. Can you read? Okay.
A new species for scenario 2 for group 2 is that a new species of water bird was recently discovered in a lake in the Philippines. It is endemic and now endangered, but a small community lake has been polluting the lake with their waste.
Okay, thank you so much, Gab.
Yep.
Okay, so
I just wanted to be clear that our campaign name was Be Pato the Lake, because Pato is also
Tagalog word.
Yeah, it translates to duck. So it's also a call to be part of the lake or saving the lake.
Okay, so that's the first one. Oh wait, it's here. Sorry. So I'll just reiterate. So I'll just state it. So a new species of water bird was recently discovered in a lake in the Philippines. It is endemic and now endangered, but a small lake community has been polluting the lake with their waste. So just imagine like this is the exact water birds, of course. Since I'm from the Philippines, of course, so some of you already know this one. It's the Philippine duck. The scientific name is Anas luzonica. So it's an endemic Philippine bird, and of course, it's a water bird, and it's also being threatened because of different factors like hunting and such. And then just imagine this is a lake in the Philippines. So just to give you visuals on how you can imagine like the situation. Okay, thank you. So outcomes we want. So of course, first we need to protect the endemic water bird population, knowing that the pollution can be one of the agents of decreasing its population. So we need to protect those that species specifically. So we need to recognized by the committee in terms of status. So for example, this water bird, it's in terms of, let's say, IUCN status, like it's already threatened, it's already endangered. So it should be recognized by the committee, like its status, like or let's say progress. So we need to find out also the source of pollution and implications on local community livelihoods. So for example, the source of pollution can be the effluents or the wastewaters from the aquaculture. It can be from the different packaging of plastic products being used by the local communities. And for the next one, of course, like the outcome that we want, we need to conserve the lake because of its ecological services, not only to the people but also to the local and endemic species of water birds, or let's say different organisms and such. So we need to find out what other species that could have been impacted due to the pollution. Of course, this pollution is really big in terms because it's a body of water, it's a lake, of course. So it does not only imply that these water birds are the only ones being affected. So it can also be the communities who are depending on the lake, and also different, let's say, marine, let's say if it's freshwater, so freshwater invertebrates, freshwater fish, and also different birds who thrive or forage in the lake. Okay, thank you for that one. Okay, next, who wants to present group 2?
Okay, so when we thought about some of the influential people who we wanted to work with. We thought about the allies, which were of course the birders, tourists, potentially conservationists, community members who didn't like the pollution as well. Depending on how big the community is, we just wanted to find out people who might prefer an unpolluted lake. Influencers that we hope to be able to work with are people like the media, the neighborhood committees who are able to make announcements to the community of the village, and actually have some kind of like power or directive. People we thought who might be against the idea of conserving the lake were people who were obviously benefiting from the polluting activity, and maybe capitalists, right? So if the activity of pollution was coming through let's say factories or intense agriculture, maybe if people started alternative sources of livelihood, they would be less pollutive. And some of the agents of change that came to our mind were, of course, the local government units and then youths. Next slide. So we considered a number of pathways to change. One of it is, of course, trying to get people's opinions and make sure that everybody's needs are voiced out. So we wanted to create a kind of coalition and have a town hall so that people could meet, and people on both sides of the team could meet and understand each other's problems. And we also really wanted to be able to try to convince people who are polluting the lake that there might be alternative sources of livelihood for them, right, or income generation. So things like ecotourism, and also thinking about the other ecosystem services and benefits that people might get from the lake. Okay, just gonna skip. And then moving on to the campaign assets, we thought about social media campaigns, webinars to educate people, to engage people in the natural capital and the ecosystem services of the lake, but also to show people that it would be a great tourism destination, a great place for outdoor education, also a really great place for just relaxing and enjoying yourself. So one other idea was also to do walks to show people why the lake is amazing. And like 30 seconds left. We had a couple of asks, basically getting people to lobby for change and to push for stakeholders to be more involved in seeing the lake as part of their own natural heritage. Thank you.
Great, that's amazing. Congrats, Group 2, for that amazing presentation and well-detailed presentation as well. So we'll provide general feedback later afterwards again. So next up is we can have Group 6. So Group 6, if we have a representative, if you guys have PowerPoints again, feel free to share screen. So Group 6, yeah. So for scenario 6, a new species of freshwater fish was recently discovered in a freshwater ecosystem in Japan. It is believed to be endemic and now endangered and at risk from overfishing by the local small lake community. The community is not aware of the plight or rarity of this fish. So, hi Group 6. Anyone of the presenting for Group 6?
Okay, I'll start and Anthony will help me. Hello everyone, I'm Sacha from the Philippines. And so our campaign is basically in hopes of building community awareness on the status of this freshwater fish that's endangered. And we decided that in such a campaign, raising community awareness would be key. And so our allies in this would be scientists and conservation organizations. Our targets would be the local fishermen who might not yet be aware of the status of the fish, and the people who could influence the outcomes would be the community leaders and educators within the small lake community. And this is keeping in mind that like the community does rely on the lake and has the health of the lake and the fish population in its best interest, but efforts will be needed to ensure that everyone knows like the status of the fish, they know how to identify it, and they know its value to the ecosystem. And so what we decided was to kind of have a campaign through like fun and vibrant local festivals, education campaigns, workshops, and guided tours of the ecosystem, which Anthony will explain in much more detail. I hope. Go, Anthony.
Hello. Yeah, we know that Japanese people love their traditional culture, so we thought a great way of bringing about awareness about this endangered fish would be through a traditional festival, so emphasizing traditional song, dance, craft, and theatre. We thought it'd be a great way to strengthen community rather than, say, creating divisions in the community by demonstrating the potential of this fish to give the community a stronger cultural identity. So an example that we found is gyutaku. There's probably some Japanese people in the group that could pronounce that better. But it's a type of traditional printing where they actually use the fish and some rice paper to create these wonderful impressions of them. So we thought perhaps they could just catch one fish and create a print of it and sell that as a fundraiser for conservation efforts.
And millions of dollars.
Yes. But the key here in raising awareness about the fish and hopefully conserving it is through creating a stronger cultural identity in this community through this festival, and making sure that there's strong education campaigns, not just for the fishermen themselves, but also for young people.
I'll continue since we have 1 minute. So similar to group 2, we have the idea of having guided walks of the ecosystem so that various community members can engage with it. The idea of a sort of festival which we've called the Sakana Festival. Again, my pronunciation is horrible, I'm sure. Sakana Festival, a future for our fish. The idea being that this festival not only has these sort of cultural events, and we're imagining like a dance music event up the main street of this community, free event, but also creating education packages to go into the schools so teachers have that ready, guided walks, the print making with the fish. So a festival that includes lots of different angles to engage as much of the community as possible. I'm sure that our group was strongly influenced by having 2 musicians as a part of it, so I apologise to the others if they wanted more science focused to the whole thing, but it's a festival in the end, so there you go.
Yay! Congrats to 6. Amazing use of visuals. And wow, yeah, very interesting use of a festival, actually. So up next is group number 3. Yeah. Group 3.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi. Right. So I'll be presenting first for group 3 and then Janina will come after that. So basically, our scenario is that a dam is proposed to be built in a river in Vietnam, and this dam will actually provide water for millions of people in the metropolis, but it will increase the risk of flooding and would displace the indigenous communities living in the area where the dam will be built. So first we looked at the kind of outcomes we wanted to achieve under this scenario. One thing we took into consideration was that if the indigenous community was going to be displaced, it will definitely have to consider a sensitive relocation of them without having to jeopardize their livelihoods. So after we took that into consideration, we thought about it more in terms of the campaign that we wanted to push for, and we thought about it in terms of water consumption. So we looked at the problem of rainwater harvesting and water recycling in the city in general, because if water has to be taken from a rural area, obviously there's a larger issue that lies with consumption within a city. And this is because there's a rural-urban divide whereby the city benefits disproportionately and therefore should not actually exert pressure on indigenous communities. So with all these factors in mind, our main outcome was actually to look at better water management within the city and to reduce water consumption. So next, when we looked at our pathway to change, we thought that the most obvious demographic to first target would be in the city dwellers, and this would be through a two-pronged approach. First through an economic method of appealing people through financial disincentives and creating water tariffs for increased water usage, and also to create incentives for people who innovate in water management and even if they adopt water-saving technologies. Obviously, in this process, stakeholders involved would be the Public Water Utilities Board or basically any the relevant authorities that provide water, because for them there's an economic aspect that they can't lose out on as well. So here after talking about the economic side of it, another pathway of change we looked at for city dwellers to care more about the dam construction is in ecotourism and in a more information-driven campaign. So obviously we want people to understand the beauty of the local communities and in the natural heritage of the area that will be destroyed in the construction of them. So this really appeals to kind of the aesthetic and the moral side of the city dwellers' sensibilities, especially in a consideration of how it's a very divided sort of like a rural-urban issue. So now Janina will talk more about the campaign itself and what we intend to do.
Yeah, well said, Gail. Thank you. So the way we wanted to aim our campaign, the main way we wanted to convey our message is through the water bills of the people in the city. So we chose this because it had a sort of a captive audience feel to it, like everybody in the city would be receiving their water bill. So this would be an ideal way to talk to them. And so our campaign slogan would be, what are you doing for water? So it's like we're challenging them, what are you doing for water? And then instead of a typical water bill, which we have an image of here, we could include images of the mountains, things more related to ecotourism, and then perhaps links that would lead people more to information about the campaign. But what we wanted to show was the disparity in water consumption between the people in the city and the people who live in the rural areas. But we also wanted to show, like, to encourage people to change their behavior. We can compare their water consumption with their neighbors and then try to challenge them to bring their water consumption down. That way everybody would be changing their behavior to bring their water consumption down. And then to help them do that, on the water bill, we can also show ways to how they can reduce their water bill. Maybe we can link them up with other companies or firms or any of the groups that have, like we mentioned earlier, the incentives for innovation in water management. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Great job, Group 3. Wow, that's a very, very unique and genius idea, I think. Okay, so next up is group number 5. So if we have a presentation for group number 5.
Alright, may I start?
Oops.
Oops, one photo is there. Wait a second. One photo is missing. That's weird.
Okay. So group 5 scenario is a large palm oil plantation company was contracted by the government to develop in the peatlands of Indonesia. The proposed development area is just by the border of a Ramsar site.
All right, thank you everyone. My name is Jason Teo, and we will be presenting a scenario that we are very familiar with as Malaysian as well, which is oil palm plantations. So our team has discussed who to approach is usually very easy. Basically the organizations, the people, and the government. But I think we want to narrow down on how we want to convince them to stop this plantation. And we come up with the idea of using logic and story. using logic by telling them what is the flaws, what is the outcome of such plantations, and using photos to tell them the story of what they bring to us. And our slogan is the people, flora and fauna over profits. Now we have 4 points, and the first 2 will be described by my friend first, which I will walk away from the spotlight and welcome my friend to talk about the first 2 points.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Munira. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this proposed development for the oil palm company is on the peatland, which is a huge diversity of ecosystem, and is near to the border of the Ramsar site. So the impact of this oil palm plantation is have both on the peatland and also the Ramsar site. So through the first point, the pollution is caused the pollution in terms of the water pollution that will impact in the form of the herbicide or pesticide through the leaching mechanism, and while planting the palm, and the flow or impact is to the Ramsar site itself. And then the second is causing the habitat degradation, which is reducing the wildlife population such as proboscis monkey, hornbill, or large of the group of birds, perhaps the migratory birds that will impacting at the Ramsar site. And by reducing the population is causing by the clearing up the land for the plantation itself. So the impact for both peatland and Ramsar is a huge thing, I guess, because it's caused the two land, peatland and also the Ramsar site. So next point is poaching and local. I give it back to the Jason. Yeah, Jason.
Thank you, Munira. Okay, one photo is missing, right? From the, which is you can see from my back. There's a lot of birds, right? Those are migratory birds. So to a lot of hunters, right, when they see this amount of birds, they usually drool. It's so easy to hunt them. They are so big in number. It's very good profits. So the bad thing about making this plantation, right, is that you build roads to these places. You allow the hunters easy access to these Ramsar sites where the migratory birds are. So we will appeal to them, right, by telling them, look at this amount of birds that you have in your land. Wouldn't it be a shame, right, if some outsiders come in and just take away all of your birds? That's the story they want to tell them, and the logic as well, and tell them that what does this bird bring to your land as well, and why you want to keep them. And the last point is the local communities. Now, if we were to build this plantation, right, it will affect the Ramsar sites as we discussed before, and this will affect the Kenya and Kayan, especially in the Kalimantan side of Borneo. Now, this is an issue because we will appeal to the government that it is your job, our job, to protect everyone in our land, no matter of where they live. And these people, the Kenya and Kayan, they rely on the Ramsar sites to make sure that their fish is always available for hunting. So we will appeal to them by saying that, look at this lady, like the one that we showed on the most rights. This is part of your people and they rely on you to protect them. Are you going to turn them away? That's the story they want to tell them as well. And
yes.
And that's all what we want to say. Sorry, Munira?
Okay, I might be at some point. So because we can't stop them from doing the development because it's part of our economic value. So maybe during that time we can do some of the monitoring works with the local people, and also with the local people to minimize the impact, and then some sort of involvement of the youth itself. So everybody must take their own actions, especially to the local resident here, like Jason said. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that, Munira. And yeah, so basically that's all for our presentation. We know who to approach, and this is how we were going to do it. And that's all for us. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thanks so much, David, for that, and Amir for that great presentation. Really passionate. I can see the passion, feel the passion you're coming in. Okay, up next is group 4. So last but not the least, group 4. Their scenario is The youth comprises a big part of the population in the East Asian Australasian Flyway. However, they are not involved in the current intergovernmental discussions of the Ramsar Conference of the Parties due to seniors neglecting their potential. So let's see what Group 4 has.
Okay, thank you, Gab. So in behalf of my group mates, Sandy and Mingyu, I'm Raisa and we would like to greet you. Good evening. So our group agreed that we'll engage the youth, will encourage and emphasize in the importance of East Asian Australasian Flyway. So we had entitled it Youth Involvement in the East Asian Australasian Flyway. Now these are the pathways or the track that we'll be using to be able to proceed with our campaign. First, we will introduce and orient the students of what is this East Asian Australasian Flyway is. We'll try to really inculcate in them the importance, the value of taking part into a kind of campaign like this. Because of course, it will be on our local communities and to the different level. We'll also try to adapt it to a specific level of students so that it would really be appealing to them. And then next, with those youth that had committed themselves into the orientation that we had made, we'll try to mobilize them. And then from that, we'll coordinate with Ramsar COP and our country's environmental sectors and the Department of Education to do so. And these are the people that will try to tap and help us into reaching our goals. Youth organizations like EAAF and Youth Engage in Wetlands. For the influencers, we talked about individual networks that we have, and we highlighted here the SNS like YouTube and TikTok because we all know that our youth are very much into these parts. So for a way for us to encourage them is to let them see that this kind of issue is not it's not really you should be taking part into situations like this. It's one of the things that should be prioritized. So it's a way to reach out to them. That's why we're using YouTube and TikTok or in other SNS like and we will also try to tap in the influencers from those SNS. And the agents of change will be the policymakers, government organizations, and the NGOs. Now, the other part of our presentation will be shared by Sandy.
Thank you, Ms. Raisa. And for our campaign assets, we thought of making a website so that it would be much accessible to everyone. And to create videos, we thought of creating videos about a testimonial or short documentary of those people who were engaged in natural disasters or tragedy within the East Asian Australasian Flyway, such as that, so that it would convey emotions that is much relatable and experience based, so that the youth would be, so that the people, especially the youth, would have an interest on helping and taking part in it. We also thought of creating infographics. So this infographics would contain all the information necessary to take part and why it is important to get involved. So we thought of infographics because it's much more easier to read, and since it is in a creative way, it would grab more attention and interest. And of course, songs. So songs is something that would remind us every time we hear a song. It would remind us of something that is important or relatable. So we thought that song maybe also be a good campaign format. And then we will also, as mentioned, we will utilize the SNS platforms for hashtags, trends, and challenges. So as you can see, it is inclined on a mix of digital and social media. So since almost everyone, every youth is always on their phones and computers and mobile devices. So I thought, so we thought that this would be a good campaign. So some of the slogan that we thought of are there is power in youth. So youth are very much powerful, especially if we will all collaborate, and commitment to a culture of volunteerism, and the importance of taking initiative. So that's all, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks so much to Group 4. Yeah, maybe one day after this, people could actually start doing TikTok and YouTube and share it to the whole participants, for the whole forum to see. Even maybe the General Secretariat could actually see it. So thank you so much, all the groups, for participating. Everything was engaging. Everything was really amazing. You had amazing ideas. So I'll give it to Sacha, because we're actually kind of running out of time. So to give some general feedback on the observations and how the presentations today. So you guys could really reform or like improve your campaigns.
Yeah, very impressed considering what you can do in 25 minutes, half an hour with a group of people that don't usually work together. They were all amazing. And particularly for the people who managed to kind of discuss for quite a long time and then bring together something at the last minute, that I was very impressed. Okay, I'll just try and make a few general observations. So I think in absolutely all of the groups, I mean, a really amazing thing I think you can all see is the strength of how different teams with different skills pull together and take quite different approaches. I mean, they were all really impressive in different ways. So the exercise that I had written in blue that we hadn't really, that I said not to bother with for this one, is important in future campaigns, which is basically looking at all the skills there are within the team, because that should define your approach. Whatever the strengths are within your team and your networks, it's probably where the strength is going to be in your campaigning as well. There is, yeah, amazing strength of different approaches. I love the boldness of those who were already getting to like putting information in electricity bills. That's one thing I've found generally in the conservation world, is that there's too much assumption that people won't help you, that you won't be allowed to do certain things. And there's definitely a strength in youth asking for things. People are particularly sensitive to it. So I would say, tend to assume you have more power than you automatically think you might, and don't be afraid to ask for things. I have found it's worked brilliantly well for me. What my father once said to me, "Oh, you don't like disappointment. You don't handle disappointment very well." And I was like, well, why should I accept disappointment? If I think something really has to be done and it's important, then I'll just find another route for it. So determination is really, really important. Maybe a couple of things is being quite clear on your pathway to change. So a couple of them, I thought there could be potentially a really simple pathway to change. You might not have to actually put all the effort into doing them. The purpose of this exercise was to be creative, but sometimes there might be a simple ask. One of those I would like to think, I'll come onto that in a second. There was a few groups really did think about it, others I didn't see much of it, is thinking about whose stories. So there was talk of kind of educating people, but really make sure that you consider, yeah, the human stories behind this. So I loved the festival, which was actually taking a cultural story and making more of that, making it people's own story. And then when you considered, say, doing the educational tours, my question was, who would be doing that educational tour? Is it the conservationist, or is that something actually that the locals should kind of embrace and be doing that? So I'm sure you would have thought of that anyway, but it's an important thing to not only think about what stories, include human stories, but also think about who should be telling those stories, who should kind of take ownership and feel the pride in it. If we can make that come from a local voice, that's even more powerful. Like with our journey with the swans, for me, as soon as I got hunting communities as advocates for it, it was so much more powerful than the conservationists talking about hunting. And yeah, thinking also about really I mean, obviously for this exercise you had limited time, so there might have been multiple audiences and you came up with a campaign idea. can't stress enough the importance of really trying to imagine or put yourself in the shoes of the people that you are trying to influence. And quite often those will be people in roles that you will never have had before. You won't have much experience of being a CEO of a mining company, for example. So it's well worth talking to somebody who might have that experience and getting their views on what might be actually the points that make them change. What could be the pressures? What's their daily life like? So yeah, with a lot more time, you can put a bit more thought into that. And then, yeah, as a last point, the idea of some potentially easy paths to change. I would like to think, if this is a real scenario, Gab, of youth not being involved in the Ramsar conversations, I would like to think that's a really easy one to solve. Actually, that should be a case of just asking and finding a platform for that. And I just would like to say, if that isn't easy, then I'm happy to help if in any way I can make that happen. Thank you very much. Yeah, really impressive. I've had a lot of fun.
Thanks so much, Sacha. So to wrap up everything, I'll share something, just some housekeeping rules as well. So yeah, the real goal of this workshop is that each one of us have the power to really tell our own stories and tell other people's stories to empower them and be the voice for migratory water birds and for our wetlands. You know, we have so many different problems that we showed, many scenarios, from youth to hydropower dams to energy. But together, we can actually make something happen in order to raise awareness of the issue, educate and empower the local communities, and even innovate new ideas for campaigns. So thank you so much, guys. That's all for this session. And I hope you learned something in this task and you got to meet and connect with your fellow group members in the breakout rooms. So just a housekeeping rules, again, to answer the post-session survey, we'll be sharing the link here at the chat. So you can answer this, that can help us gauge for the following next sessions in order to make and improve your experience for the Flyway Youth Forum. A kind reminder as well to everyone to make sure that the calendar in the Whova agenda is set at the time for your own time zone. So one way to do this is to add it to the calendar. This session, we had a lot of latecomers who didn't manage to actually synchronize the time zones. So it would be good to check out on hand. We will also share in the threads a global time zone converter to help you out. You can actually also Google that in case you're not sure of the time zones differences. And also, we would like to invite you all. This is going to be an informal session. We'll have like a wetland party. So we would have all the participants join. This is voluntary. If you have the time, we will send out the details on Whova. And we will be hosting like some short games and some networking sessions for you guys to actually connect with your fellow participants for the Flyway Youth Forum and to maybe even engage you in the next session in the next weekend. So that's about it. Thank you guys. And I hope you have a good weekend and another start of the week. And I hope to fly with you all soon on December 5 for the next session. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. And
bye, everyone.
Brilliantly organized. Fabulous. Well done.
Bye, everyone. Thank you to Sacha and Gab for the wonderful section. I'm sure a lot of story. Thank you so much.
Bye.